Our palms provide us with a wealth of information, and that information we carry with us through our lives, and the information on our hands changes all the time, contrary to popular opinion. And most people go through their lives without truly ever fully understanding their own strengths and weaknesses, their own potential. And this is what palmistry is so very good for. The common misconception is that palmistry is a divinatory tool, that it's about telling the future. And there is certainly room for this, but palmistry is also superb at underlying potential health traits and understanding a person's personality, their characteristics and their traits in that regard, as well as their skills. So it's so very useful for really understanding a person's true potential. And I wonder, have you ever wondered what's in your own palms? Palmistry is around 4,500 years old, and most people think it derived from India. However, physical sources show us that the earliest evidence comes from India and China at around about the same time. The Chinese were using fingerprint patterns to detect burglars, and they were also identifying health traits using palmistry. The ancient Greeks and the Romans were also obsessed with palmistry, and Aristotle allegedly found a manuscript of some sort and handed this over to Alexander the Great, which unfortunately burned down in his library. But since then and through the Renaissance, much about palmistry has been written and spread over to the West, particularly during the Crusade. A lot of it was brought back from then. But so there are two now, uh, relatively two different schools of thought. There's the Eastern and Western, and there's certainly offshoots of that as well. Chinese palmistry is very different to Indian palmistry, so it's interesting that they both came up around about the same time. Now, in the West, parts of the hand are known as mounts, and the fingers are all named under the 8 planets of our solar system. In more modern times, Pluto's been thrown in for good measure. Now, each of these fingers determine and show us a specific part of our psyche, as well as our abilities and our skills and our potential. The Jupiter finger is all about judgment, authority, ego, decision making, and ambition. If your Jupiter finger reaches past the halfway mark of, if it reaches past halfway of the first tip of the second finger, you know you have a strong and healthy ego, and you are likely someone who falls into positions of leadership. You're a good delegator. If the tip of your Jupiter finger is pointed, then you're a good explainer. If your middle finger, that's the Saturn finger, is long, then you are a strong administrator. Timing and planning are your strengths. Now, Saturn is the finger of time and planning, the inevitable of duty, of doing the right thing, societal contributions, and traditional values. A long Saturn finger also shows us the potential for melancholy. The ring finger, or the Apollo finger, sometimes known as the sun finger, it shows us our creative and artistic abilities, our talents, and what we bring to the table in terms of skills. It also shows us our penchant for beauty, and as such, vanity and reputation. Glory, the need for this, is shown by an overly long Apollo finger, and that can be seen if Apollo reaches past halfway of the tip of Saturn. Now, the Mercury finger, or the little finger, is the finger of communication and expression, of learning, of skills, language, science, business, industry. The way in which we measure the length of the little finger is not so much by measuring it against the phalanges of the Apollo finger, but by measuring the entire length of the finger against the first two phalanges, the first bottom phalanges of Apollo. And if this finger is in fact longer than these, we know we have a long Mercury finger, and this shows us a good ability to express and communicate our message and who we are to the outside world. A sharpened tip, a pointed tip of the Mercury finger shows someone with a sharp tongue, someone who is able to very quickly get their point across. Now, the mounts on our hands can show us specific traits about our skills and our personality and our potential. The Jupiter mount, named by the same finger that resides above it, shows us our sense of pride and ambition, our need to dominate and control. If this is a well-developed mount, as in if it sort of exceeds and pushes out of the palm itself, it's raised and heated and rounded, and there's a large space between underneath this index finger and sort of almost sort of pushing the lines away, we know we have a large mount, and that shows the capacity for dominating and controlling is strong. Now, again, leadership skills are seen, especially when we see both a long index finger and a large and well-developed Jupiter mount, especially if the Jupiter finger sits high and the mount itself is quite high on the palm. Where the mount sits on the hand really shows us the importance of what that mount means over all of the other mounts in the palm. Now, Saturn sits highest on this person's palm than any other mount, so we know that traditional values, that morals, ethics, integrity is a key trait of importance to this person. We know from this person is very sensible and quite sober. The Apollo mount is all about creativity and our artistic skills and talents in a creative respect. And again, when we see this developed high up on the palm, then we know we have someone who is inclined towards creative and artistic industries. Now, this person has a very well-developed Mercury mount, so we know this person is strong in areas of commerce, industry, business, and is probably quite an industrious thinker, someone who's quite productive in terms of their abilities to communicate and memorize. Now, as well as the mounts on the palm, and I've mentioned four of them, there's also inner Mars, followed by outer Mars, in between these two, the central plane of Mars. At the base of the thumb is the Venus mount. It sits underneath inner Mars, Mars being the god of war, Venus being the god of love and battles, sits next to Mars because we fight for those we love. Venus is, of course, love and battles. It's our desire, it's our family and our friendships, and it's all the things that we are passionate and love in life. It's in a lot of ways very similar to the Apollo mount. Now, at the base of the palm, just in between two other mounts, is the mount of Neptune, and it's our ability to captivate and hypnotize others. This lower portion of Luna in more recent times has been known as the Mount of Pluto, and it shows our ancestral memories. Above this, we have the Mount of Luna, which is all about our imagination and our creative expanse, our subconscious and our dreams and our long-term memory. Outer Mars is the place of planning and future and tactics. The central plane of Mars is more about society and how we deal with conflict around others. Inner Mars is more to do with our inner sense of drive and determination, anger. The thumb is divided into two separate parts, willpower and logic, our determination, our overall personality, as well as our ideas, and the two show us how we carry out these. And the third, obviously, as I've mentioned, the Mount of Venus acts as the third basal phalanx of the thumb and desire. So we have I can, I will, and I want. There are three major palmar lines, of course, the lifeline, the headline, and the heart line. And a great deal of information can be determined, can be drawn from these lines and how they work in conjunction with each other and all of the other lines that kind of intersect and cross over, as well as the depth of the line, the color, the formation in where they kind of break off and begin again, the islands and loops that are formed in these, the lines that branch out away from these as well. So, for example, a curved headline shows us someone with a creative approach, a flexible and adaptable ability to see things. Straight headline, however, one that runs across the palm in a very straight level, line shows us someone who's very level-headed, also someone who's very rigid in terms of their thinking. They're very black and white. They're highly logical. Length of the headline shows us our capacity to think ahead. A short headline shows us someone who's very able to think quickly in the moment, process information quickly, as does the shortness of the fingers. The heartline shows us a great deal of information about our physical makeup as well as our emotional. The lower the heartline, the greater the emotional capacity, the greater the need to love and be loved. The length of the heartline shows us our idealism and how much we are willing to do for others. The curvature of the heartline, again, can indicate how we give ourselves to others and what relationships mean to us. A strongly curving heartline shows us someone who has a strong need for physical affection, and it is likely, in part, flirtatious. The lifeline shows us how we live our life and the overall life force within us. A thick and sluggish lifeline can show us obesity and can show us potential health problems. The lifeline shows us the environment that we live in as well, and the length of it has no real bearing on the length of our life. Usually, the lifeline, the arc of it shows us how a person lives their life and how sort of bold they are in the way in which they live their life. A person with a lifeline that wraps very tightly around the thumb, like this person, has very few friends and decides to keep their social circles small. They decide not to venture outside of their own native homeland all that much. Someone with a widened lifeline shows us the opposite, someone who's traveling a lot and is very willing to try new things and to increase their social network. A lifeline that jets straightly in towards Luna into a straight line shows us someone who is extremely bold and steps outside into the unknown, and it's a potential sign for fame, in fact. It's someone who is very bold. Now, I have only really the surface here, but I just wanted to make a short video here to explain all of the things that you could possibly see in your hands or that I could see for you. If you are, in fact, interested in a reading, please do book with me on my website. And thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe to my channel on YouTube.